Hello everyone, and welcome to this version of Shergroup on the Sofa. And I'm delighted today to be joined by the charming Nick Hood, a distinguished chartered accountant, business leader, and media commentator, who's had an extraordinary 6 year, you don't 6 year, 6 decade career, spanning finance, commerce, and insolvency. So welcome to the sofa, Nick. Nice to see you.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
He's just been telling me before we got online today that he's had a remarkable show business lineage in his family, and we might get into that today. But he chose the rather dry world of accountancy. I think he would have been a great performer, actually. Got a lovely sparkle. But became a chartered accountant in 1970. So
Yes.
you've held senior exec roles across various parts of business, construction, engineering, and media, and has led the listing of an engineering group on the unlisted securities market back in 1987. So a significant financial guy, and he's going to tell us his story today. And then you found insolvency, or insolvency found you, and
Not quite like it sounds, but yes.
which I'm always fascinated with, because insolvency doesn't sit terribly comfortably against my proper role as a sheriff. Sheriffs and insolvency practitioners sort of bump into one another, really. But
Well, I know because I ended up as being one of those people that nobody ever wanted to meet professionally.
oh well, we're putting that straight today. And you became the BBC's trusted voice on insolvency and business rescue, which is it's a huge accolade, really, and involved in creating the largest international network of rescue firms across 103 countries.
Yes.
Do you want to tell us who that what brand was that?
That was under Begbie's trainer,
Of course, of course. Okay.
not where I am now, but yes.
Yeah,
Then.
I know the name, of course I do. So, okay. So your journey into the world of insolvency, and you were just telling me that you had, this showbiz lineage. And so I guess you were the odd one out in your family, were you? Or were you just,
Yeah, the black sheep of the family. I mean, very much so. And it's strange, really, because when you look back over in January, it'll be 60 years since I started work,
right,
and I look back over that, and if I'm brutally honest with myself, none of it was ever planned. Because if you go back to the 60s and the 70s, once you got an accounting qualification, frankly, you could do anything.
right.
The jobs are plenty. You job hopped every 2, 3, 4 years, all of that stuff. So I bounced around, as you said, did a bit of this and a bit of that,
Yeah.
and you're quite right. Insolvency found me in the sense that I had a private investment in a small and very struggling business in the media space, so something I knew a little bit about, and the I was a director. I was the only accountant, only person with any really numerical skills anywhere, financial skills around it. And the bank decided they were unhappy with the loan they'd made to the company, called me up and said, "Look, we're going to put a firm of accountants in to have a look at the books and have a look and just see what's going on there." And I was sort of deeply upset. But cut a long story short, uh, they put a firm in um, to look at it. And by the time the partner who came and looked at stuff, he and I had finished disagreeing about his report, he'd offered me a job.
Oh,
And
okay.
I was actually the CEO of this small listed engineering business at the time, hating every moment of that. And so when he said, "Look, we've got we need your range of skills, and we can teach you what insolvency is all about. If you give up your job, I'll give you another one instead."
Oh, okay.
Um, that was 1990, autumn of 1990, and I then had to go and get qualified as a insolvency practitioner. So having been uh, something that my daughter tells me about from time to time reminds me, the youngest person ever to qualify as a chartered accountant, I then became the oldest person ever to become a licensed insolvency practitioner. I mean, there may be older ones since, I don't know. But that was all happening the same time my daughter was doing GCSEs. So the
Okay.
house was not a happy place with two of us studying in it.
No, no, I can imagine a bit intense,
Yeah.
probably.
Yeah, so that was insolvency, and and that got me into this sort of wonderful world of. It took me a while to realize, but actually, if I was any good as an insolvency practitioner, and that's for others to judge, it was purely and wholly to do with the fact that all the mistakes that I was trying to pick up the pieces from that companies had made, I think I'd made most of them myself over the previous 20, 30 years.
Sure,
So
sure.
in a funny sort of way, I was probably poacher turned gamekeeper.
Yes, I can see how your accountancy experience would set you up nicely to become an
Yeah,
IP for sure.
yeah, yeah.
And so and of course you've had uh 20, 30 years of being an IP,
35.
35. So what is it for those that are listening to this and don't know what IPs do, insolvency practitioners, what do you actually do?
Well, I mean, the public perception is that IPs go in, um, destroy companies and get paid a huge amount of money for doing so. Actually, if you talk to IPs, and bear in mind, it's a strange world, IPs, because there are only actually 800 or so people who are licensed to be a liquidator or administrator and who actually do the work. There's more who are qualified, but only about 800 do it. So it's a pretty small world. And actually, if you talk to them, their perception of what they do is that they're there to rescue companies, to save jobs, to save the business, not to bury the company. And so it's quite difficult. I mean, to put it at its most basic, what the IP does is they get called into a company, they get appointed as liquidator or administrator, depends on the circumstances, and it's their job to sell the assets, get the money in, pay the creditors so far as there's any money left. To do that, they also have a slightly broader role, which in an odd sort of way is as important as the rest of it, and that's to look at why did the company fail, and to look at the conduct of the directors, and to report on that to the insolvency service in the business department. So it's not just a slash and burn, sell the assets job, and the the challenge is that nobody ever thinks the insolvency practitioner gets the best price for anything
Mm,
because there is this dichotomy, this complete disconnect between the what a company's books say its assets are worth and what, when you've got a failed business and there's not a going concern anymore, what you can actually get for them.
sure.
And probably the classic illustration. I remember once doing a training session for some of the business journalists at the BBC and looking at what happened when House of Fraser went bust and what happened to the balance sheet there. And the last published balance sheet showed, oh, I can't remember the details, 1.3 billion pounds worth of assets. I think the administrators finally realized about 120 million.
Right. Huge
So,
gap. Mm,
and so because you try explaining that to, the directors of the failed company, why
mm,
you couldn't sell the stock for lots of money, you couldn't collect all the debtors,
yes.
it's difficult. So that's what the IP is doing, getting the assets in, selling them, and paying the creditors. That's it.
Mm, yes. Okay. Yes, they don't have a great public
Rep.
image. And yet I know that directors can go to them before a creditor does to ask for help, right? To
Sure.
restructure the company and to sell the company on their behalf to get them out
Sure.
of a hole if that's where they're headed.
Yeah.
So yes, I see that, but I think the public perception is probably that they're there to just raid the piggy bank and get what they can and make their fee. But that's
Absolutely,
yeah,
and the sort of the trouble in a way is that the the public doesn't understand what the IP doesn't understand what goes wrong in a company, and it certainly doesn't understand the complexity of doing the job. I mean, it is if you if I'm allowed a little profanity, it's a shitty job. It's awful, and it's certainly not for the faint-hearted. But you're right. The insolvency profession is terrible at explaining what it does. There was a pathetic attempt about 6 or 7 years ago by the trade body R3, who put out some stats about how many jobs they'd saved and what value of assets they'd sold and recycled, um, and it sort of disappeared without trace. It sort of was covered briefly. Nothing is said. When I get on on the media and talk about insolvency, nobody thinks we're anything except what's the word? I was once called by Private Eye a vampire of the recession.
yeah. Well, as a sheriff, I have the same kind of mud chucked at me. And so I do understand why it's not always a popular role, but it has to be done. That's the mechanism of the law. And you're doing, as you say, an unpopular job, and I'm sure you're trying to make it as elegant and as painless as possible for the people involved. And good to know that there are, people like yourself, professional and thoughtful, who are trying to move directors from where they are to where they need
Oh,
to be. Yeah,
I know. Actually, there's a wonderful story about that. I remember one of the nicest moments in 35 years in this game it was a small company. I think they made um, signs to go over shops and stuff like that.
sure.
Um, and it was in terrible trouble. And the director and wife frog marched him into the bank manager's office and said to the bank, "Will you blooming well get my husband to stop while we still own our house?"
Yeah,
Because they'd given a personal guarantee.
yeah,
Anyway, the bank picked up the phone. I got in to do the job, and we were in early enough to rescue it. We found a buyer. The husband got a job with the new owners. Their personal guarantee wasn't called, and the bank got all its money back. And I wouldn't like to tell you the creditors got all their money back because they didn't. But at the end of it, the very last time I saw her at the end of the job, the wife said to me, "I can't tell you it's been a pleasant experience, but I know you've done your best to make it as painless, the word you used, as
yeah.
possible." And I'll take that, to be honest with you. I'll
Good,
take that.
good. Yeah, I mean, some recognition, right? That you're trying to do it professionally. So the IP then gets paid out of the assets that
Yeah.
they pull in, and who are
Yes,
they accountable to?
yes. Well, yes, you get paid out of the money that you collect. So if you don't actually if the assets aren't worth what you think they're worth, then the answer is the IP will do the job because they're appointed and they won't get paid. So I don't expect anybody to get a violin out at that point. But the answer is IPs write off an awful lot of their time,
Yeah,
and their work in progress, use the professional term in
yeah.
that. The fees have to be approved by the creditors. So it's not just finger in the air, how much can we get out of this? You have to ask and you have to justify. The fees can be challenged in court, um, so it's not a free pass.
No,
It's not a free pass. Accountability. Well, again, I go back far enough to the bad old days of administrative receivership appointments by the bank, where the only person I cared about was what the bank manager thought. But these days, that's all gone. And the law in the case of administration liquidation, the two main processes, says that the IP is must act in the interests of the general body of creditors. So, we're accountable to the creditors. In the case of an administration, we're accountable to the court. Um, we also, and this is the bane of IP's life, we're accountable to our regulators. And I know everybody complains that insolvency practitioners regulate themselves. Well, we don't really. We're regulated by some pretty tough professional bodies, and maybe we'll come we'll come back to some of the issues to do with that. And of course, um, last and sometimes by no means least, we're also accountable to the media, to the public, and to the media. So when you're on a high-profile case, believe me, I mean, I remember doing the administration of a collapsed wedding gift list company. You
Right.
know, places where you go and the bride and groom put
Yeah.
the list up, and
Yes. Put the
the
registry
guests all go and
together.
buy.
Yes.
Well, when it went bust, there were 800 weddings in progress.
Hmm.
So I had 800 angry brides. I had 800 angry mother-in-laws of the bride,
Hmm.
worse than the mothers, but the mother-in-laws.
Yeah.
And um, and I think probably there were 600 or 700 bits of local media, you know, local newspapers as there were in in those days, radio stations, all the rest of it. And everything we did was picked over by the media. And of
Yes.
course, now
Sure.
it's
Hmm.
now it's worse still because you've got social media.
Yes, of course. Of
And
course.
of course, there are some fabulous, we don't have time, but some fabulous stories about, pardon me, how social media um, campaigns have interfered with some quite high profile insolvency cases. So yes, we are accountable. I don't think anybody believes that, but we are.
So you spent 15 years as a media pundit on
Yeah,
insolvency topics with the BBC, and I'm sure
love
you
them.
had other outlets as well. And were you doing a PR job for IPs during those 15 years?
Well, I mean, the good news is that almost all of that was I was a pundit. What I wasn't doing was talking about the cases I was doing.
Right.
I was there. What the BBC used to say to me was, when it was something like when Woolworths collapsed, or
Yeah.
another very public facing job was ITV Digital, and where the administrators on the case would not talk because at that time, and even to this day, the bigger firms generally don't like to talk to the media
Yeah.
about the cases. It's all about risk management, about that. So the BBC would say to me, "Look, Woolworths has gone bust. Come on and explain what's going on." When BHS fell over in 2016, again the BBC said, "We just need to understand what's happening."
Yes.
And
Yes.
so I was the the mug standing in the freezing cold outside the BHS store in Oxford Street on the day it closed, being interviewed by the BBC and almost getting soaked by a street cleaning machine going past at the time. So yeah, it's all about insolvency is complex. It's a topic that nobody really wants to talk about. Not really. The media don't want to talk about it, and the listeners don't want to hear it, or the viewers. But it's important that somebody just puts it simply, doesn't use buzzwords, and that's what I was trying to do
Hmm.
50 years. And of course, with my show business background, as you can imagine, what a wonderful thing. I mean, I once broadcast to on BBC World to 180 million people, they told me.
I'm sure.
And
Yeah.
what's not to like about that? But I also, I think one of the odder moments was doing a radio phone in for a South London community radio station called Sunrise Radio from a cubicle in the gents' toilet of the tavern stand at Lord's, because it was the only place on the ground that was quiet enough to do the phoning from. Don't ask me what the people using the cubicles either side of me thought was going
Well, hopefully, most of them were on the
on.
pitch watching the
Yeah.
cricket.